the doorway. You need to be on headphones, dear.
Oh.
Should be able to hear you. I believe we might actually be live, but the window just boogered up there. There we are. We are live. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. We're here for our final show of the year. I believe we have the Kevin cast on the air, Steve.
Yes, we do.
Kevin is back in the house. Uh-oh, that made Steve leave. I don't know where he went.
I'm back.
It's going to be a great show because I am having a martini tonight. I learned a lot about martinis last night.
It's going to be the infamous martini show.
We'll see how that works.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Last time I had a martini on the show, I couldn't remember Lindsay's name. So, there's that.
Well, you're starting off well, remembering her just now.
I know. See?
It is early,
you just handed me the martini. So.
Yes, yeah, Cindy, it is gin.
So this guy was at a party that my son threw, and he brought 5 bottles of gin and 5 bottles of vermouth and had us taste the different vermouths and the different gins and then combine them. And I've always believed, Rose just said, what's your daughter's name? I've always believed in the minimal amount of vermouth, but he said that it's just that we have cruddy vermouth or it's too old. And I said, well, what do you mean too old? He said, well, first of all, you're supposed to keep it in the refrigerator. Do you do that? And I said, no. He said, how old's your vermouth? It lasts, what did he say? Did he say a month or 3 months?
I think a couple months, yeah.
It's probably irrelevant since mine is the first bottle of vermouth I ever bought. I still have. So, yeah. So this is, do you remember what the name is, Steve? You've got it in your photos library because I made you take a picture of it.
That I do. Hold on.
I've never had. And it's a, John lost video. More tequila. No, I'm not a tequila girl. All right, I'm going to do a test recording while Steve
does some important work.
Yes. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast, hosted at podfeed.com. How we doing tonight, everybody? All right, let's see if you guys can hear this. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast, hosted at podfeed.com. How we doing tonight, everybody? All right.
So the gin is Mayfair, a London dry gin, and the vermouth is Dolan. Dolan vermouth of Shenberry, or is it Canberry? Chambry.
All right, cool. Are you sure it's not Canberra?
I don't think it is.
That echoed. Canberra? Are you hearing that?
Probably came in through the room.
Yeah, it must have been. All right, I think we're ready to do some roll call here. We got Steve and Brett and Kevin and Dan and Jiz okay. That's got to be George. Is okay. George in Oklahoma. No, in Tulsa. Jino Choi, he's not really here. He's just faking. Jumbo Shrimp, that is none other than Neil, the very first listener of the NosillaCast, at least the first listener to ever talk to me. So it's fun to see you again, Neil, and Kaylee from Japan, and John, and Rose, and Richard, and Cindy.
I think Neil makes an appearance about once a year.
Yep, whether he needs it or not. But it's fun to know he's still out there. I mean, come on, 12 and a half years. Nobody has longevity like Neil. That's pretty funny. All right, we should probably start. Oh, I should find an intro to put into the music. There we go. I think it's affecting me already, Steve.
Oh, no.
Luckily, most of the recordings are not me, so I think it'll be okay. I'm gonna play. I'll play the. I'll play the beginning of yours, George, but probably won't be able to do the whole thing. All right, here we go. We are live. My fans are kicking up. That's
chapter
good.
Marker.
Oh, good job. Okay, I don't like a beginning one.
All right,
come on.
If they can't find the beginning of your podcast, then there's no help. Right.
Don't forget the chapter markers or index for George Podfeet because Steve's will it is to be done. Okay, he's got a text expander snippet going, I think. All right, here we go. Muting Steve. Oh, if you're listening, that's for Dan.
Jingle bells.
I got jingle bells on my antlers, Dan. All right, here we go. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast, hosted at podfeet.com, a technology geek podcast with an ever so slight Apple bias. Today is Sunday, December 17th, 2017, and this is show number 658. Well, this week, Steve and I helped his wonderful parents move into a new home. It was 4 days of packing and driving long distance and unpacking, and we wouldn't have missed it for the world. But it did mean that we had a lot of time off the grid and very little time to work on the show. Whenever this happens, the NosillaCast ways always jump in and lend a hand. We've got reviews and tiny tips by George from Tulsa, Helma from the Netherlands, and the inimitable, I don't know how you even say that word, Nightwise from Belgium. I did get a chance to do one review myself, and Steve is back with his annual holiday tradition. Many thanks to all of you for stepping up and making the show happen this week. Now, next week, there will not be a live show or the week after because it will be Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. Of course, the NosillaCast will still go on with full shows both weeks, but you'll probably get them quite a bit early. If you get a fun gadget or cool software for the holidays, I really could use a few listener reviews for the week between Christmas and New Year's. So please dust off that mic and make us a recording. Well, this week's Chit Chat Across the Pond was with Allison Hartley discussing the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of converting to a new iPhone. Allison is the co-host of both the Tech Doctor podcast and That Blind Tech Show. She's warm and funny and knowledgeable, and it was simply delightful to geek out with her for 45 minutes. I should mention that her trials and tribulations had nothing to do with accessibility. It was just a conversation about how maybe Apple's quality control needs a little bit of help here. Anyway, check out that episode in the full Chit Chat Across the Pond feed or in the Chit Chat Across the Pond light feed in your podcatcher of choice. Or you can actually listen to it right at podfeet.com.
I hate to be the one to tell you this, but your antlers are on backwards.
They are?
I see a tag.
Oh, no. Terrible. Should I wear them, though? Uh-oh.
Yeah, I think they add a festive touch.
Okay, but they're making noise, and I didn't explain it to you.
Just keep your head perfectly still as you talk.
Yeah, that'll work. I should probably add a chapter marker, because this is where we're going to bring in George. Is it just me, or the chapter marker is not showing up precisely where the change actually is, you guys? I swear, I mean, I'm doing them, I don't swear, I am doing them exactly, precisely, I mean, spot on where I make the change, and yet I think the something's happening to them. Is it just me?
Well, Katie says it's not you.
So, hey, the dog is snoring.
Oh, she likes to just let her be.
Hey, wake up. Tessa.
You want me to come and get her?
And just start throwing stuff at her. I got a watch I can throw at her. Okay, so my recorder says 155 exactly, and I've just dropped in the chapter marker at exactly 155, and we'll see. I don't know what's going on with that. So I got to find George. Snoring dog is better than growling dog. Yeah. All right. So here, George on Chromebooks. He sent me a FLAC file.
Ooh, that's the new Apple lossless?
No, that's FLAC. Something else. Apple? Nope.
It's an industry standard.
Okay. Let me see. Let me listen to this just a second.
Hi.
I'm going to cut that little click off at the beginning. Okay, I think right at podfeet.com.
Hi, this is George from Tulsa, sending some virtual help to Steve and Allison as they move Steve's parents. I'm sure they'd rather I flew to California and helped Steve carry that Steinway. But what they get is this small part of a podcast Allison doesn't have to build herself. Find yourself the geek for work, family, and friends? I can't count how many times I've been called on to clean malware from Windows computers. A couple of years ago, I threw in the towel, wiped the last version of Windows I owned, and told everyone I hadn't persuaded to move to Mac I no longer did Windows. course, not everyone I know can afford a Mac. So the folks I couldn't persuade to buy a Mac, or who wouldn't maintain theirs and started calling me for Mac cleanup, I've been recommending get Chromebooks. Heck, they're cheap enough, I've given them to friends and family I cut off from my free Windows support service. Gave one to a sister-in-law 2 weeks ago. Chrome OS is about simplicity. It's a light version of Gen 2 Linux that does a verified boot on low-end hardware, including ARM chipsets, and stores user data in Google's cloud. Ideal for the kid at school who can't use the excuse, "The dog ate my Chromebook," because if the kid did the homework and the dog ate the Chromebook, the homework would still be safe on Google Drive, ready for the kid to log in and send the teacher. Chromebooks are effectively impervious to viruses and malware. About the only threat is a Chrome browser extension gone evil, and once removed, that's cured. It's a simple, fast process to power wash a Chrome OS device back to factory. And if that doesn't work, Google provides current downloads of Chrome OS images for every device on which Chrome runs. I'm submitting some links to Allison's blog, including one about how verified boot.
So I'm actually, at the same time you guys have been listening, I'm trying to run a little noise reduction on this, but there's something.
I thought you had.
No, that was on Nightwise. There's kind of a hum in this that I hadn't noticed. I actually listened to it a long time ago when George sent it, and then I read it today, and I forgot to go look at this. There we go. See if I can get I'm trying to get a sample in Audacity, and I'm going to go into effects.
The Audacity.
The Audacity. Noise profile, and then select all. I don't know if I have enough dead time. Noise reduction. Okay. I'm going to listen to this in a second here. Chrome OS was Gen 2. Who's calling somebody oxymorons? Hey, George, I tweeted about your post, and it was all kinds of people that I've never heard of before have been retweeting it. So you struck a chord. I couldn't find you in the Twitters. You know what? I'm going to export. I think I fixed it. Export audio. I don't know where that hum came from, George. You don't normally have a hum. He's going to make some joke about humming. And this is going to be clean. And we'll save that. And now we're going to go back and we're going to play that again from the beginning and see if you like it any better. And George, clean. Got to clean George up. And I was analyzing it. Let me get rid of this dead spot. This click at the beginning. All right. Now let's listen to this. Oh, now where's our chapter? Oh, who knows? There we go. Take that and move it right there. Okay. Here we go. Let's see if that sounds better. Or you can actually listen to it right at podfeet.com.
Hi, this is George from Tulsa, sending some virtual help to Steve and Allison as they move Steve's parents.
Sounds a lot better, doesn't it?
Sounds good.
I'm telling you.
It wasn't very significant, at least through through Hangouts, but
I think Hangouts was being generous because it was really extreme here. Let's skip to the end here.
Free tools.
Okay.
Free tools.
Still a little bit of hum, but not bad. That's so interesting. Okay. All right. There we go. Well, I really appreciate that, George. You know, every time you talk about Chromebooks, it makes me want to go get a Chromebook. But then I remember that I made a Chromebook out of an older Mac. So listen later for what Nightwise does, because you would think that Nightwise would be on the show to talk about putting the Chrome OS onto Macs, but that's not why he's going to be here. Anyway, next up, we've got Helma from the Netherlands. She stepped up with a tiny tip just for us. All right, and then we'll bring her tiny tip in.
Don't forget the music.
Oh, thank you. And the chapter
and the marker. Because Steve wills it to be done.
Okay, and this is going to be tiny tip. Should I put tiny tip in it or not? Now translate Japanese with iPhone. And Kaylee is our, I shouldn't drink martinis. Kaylee is our witness that this actually works really well. Let's see, where's tiny tip music? There it is. Okay. Move this out there. It's a little weird because I say it's a tiny tip and then it comes in the music. Let's see how this sounds. Anyway, next up, we've got Helma from the Netherlands. She stepped up with a tiny tip just for us. Why isn't that music playing? Why is that muted? I did not say to mute that track. Okay, try that again. With a tiny tip just for us.
Hi Alison, this is a tiny tip from Helma. As an enthusiastic origami folder, I often buy Japanese books with diagrams. Usually it's enough to look at the diagrams to figure out what I need to do, but often I wonder if there's an additional explanation in the text. I cannot read or understand Japanese, and I don't know how to produce the characters to enter them in translate.google.com. So for years, I've been pondering on actually taking classes just to be able to understand the text in my origami books. This weekend, I opened Google Translate app on my iPhone to check the meaning of some Italian words when I noticed the camera icon on the left side of the input box. I switched the language to Japanese, tapped the icon and held the camera over the Japanese text. The app wanted to download the Japanese vocabulary, and after that, it showed the text in the camera. When you do that, there are several buttons visible. The left one is an eye.
Okay, I'm actually going to jump ahead. You know, man, I sort of want to take the noise out of this one too.
This is a little more than a tiny tip. I'd call it a moderate tip. Well, we lost you. No audio. You hear me? Hold on, folks, while Podfeet diagnoses her audio problem.
That's really interesting.
What happened?
I opened up Audacity,
mm-hmm.
and it something physically muted my my interface. That's really interesting.
I mean, a button press normally it takes.
Yeah, like a physical button is required to cause that to happen. I've seen that once before.
Gremlins.
That is really interesting. Huh. All right. Wow. Loud. Okay. It's in stereo. Let me find some dead spot here. He's got a couple of spots in this in. Oh, it's not that bad. Why am I doing this? Because I can. Effect. Noise reduction. Get noise profile. Select all. Effect. Noise reduction. Okay. I cleaned up the one that she did for next week. Listen to this. There we go.
Didn't hear it.
What's that? I know you didn't. Don't worry. Everything will be fine.
Don't worry. Be happy.
Don't worry. Be happy. You know, I think this is stronger than the one the guy was making last night. Seriously. Whose idea was this, Steve? I can't believe you gave me a martini again. I actually wrote I started doing the podcast feed part of it earlier because I was afraid that maybe bad things would happen.
So your audio is coming through, but your video froze on me. But I was resizing the window. I'm going to do a refresh. I may drop out.
All right. Well, let me see. Let me get rid of move Helma here. So I'm going to put Helma back in. Yeah, this is a bad idea. Chin is so good, though.
Hi, Alison. This is a tiny tip from Helma.
Oh, that's a lot
As
better.
an enthusiastic origami...
Move her in a little bit earlier. That sounds so much cleaner.
Hi, Alison. This is a tiny tip from Helma. As an enthusiastic origami folder, I often buy Japanese books with diagrams.
I can't believe how good that worked, how well that worked. Sorry. For the grammar police. All right. What's next? Save, probably. Huh? What do you think?
Save and chapter mark.
Not yet. I'm going to talk. Here we go.
No.
Yep. It's going to happen. It's okay. I'm reading. It did save. Why does Kevin always do it twice? I don't understand that. Go right here.
Actually means.
Well, after Helma sent me this tip on how well Google Translate works in Japanese for her, I did a little bit of testing on my own. I have a friend who often posts in Japanese on Facebook, so I ran Google Translate from my phone using a screenshot as Helma suggested. Then I sent the translation to my friend and I asked her how well it did. She said it was pretty darn good. Not exact, but certainly got the right intent. Then I asked Kaylee from Japan to check it out herself because she's there. She understands. She reads Japanese and she reads English. She ran it on a blog post with a quote from Johnny Ive, and she said she was really impressed that it was really good. And she emphasized really. Not perfect, but much better than it used to be. So thanks for a great tiny tip, Helma. Cadence is all off. All right, time for some Nightwise. Okay, and I had to clean up Nightwise's audio because he records from the car. Probably should do a chapter there.
So this one is not a standalone blog post, is that right?
No, he does. He gets in the car and he does random thinking, talking out loud. So he never does any text. There's a little bit though.
Okay, but it's not a standalone.
You mean it's not? That's what I just said. He doesn't write.
Well, you said there's some text.
No text. Well, I wrote a little. No, I said there's no text. He does not do any text. Okay, here. Let me hear what this sounds. Great tiny tip, Helma.
Hello, NosillaCast ways. This is
tip, Helma.
Hello, NosillaCast ways. This is Nightwise from the Nightwise.com podcast calling with an interesting hack. First, we have to start with the problem to be solved. Well, the problem to be solved is that I'm selling my MacBook Pro. I bought it for my company, and after 3 years, it's a total tax write-off. So it is a good excuse to sell it while it still has resale value, good resale value, and buy a new one. So that's what I plan on doing. No problem, but the buyer is coming by on Sunday to pick up my MacBook Pro. I haven't really thought about, I just put it up for sale, but didn't think I would get a response so quickly. So that's okay. My MacBook Pro, my 13-inch MacBook Pro has been sold and they're picking it up on Sunday. But I can only buy my new MacBook Pro.
All right. It's going to need a lot of levelization. All right, here we go. All right, I'm going to make a chapter marker here. I'm going to call it Patreon, but it won't be right when I say Patreon because I don't want to do a full thing there. I think this drink, he was doing something. I think he was watering my drinks down last night, Steve.
I did put ice in it and shake it quite a bit. So there was some amount of water in there, but not a lot.
Apologizes. I'm going to have to wait to finish that because this is getting
Do you want some water?
Yeah, I probably should. Okay,
all right.
Here we go.
This is Nightwise signing off.
Well, it sure is ironic that Nightwise was here showing us how to put High Sierra on an old Mac and taking Linux off. And George was talking about using Chromebooks. And I actually took High Sierra, or I took an old Mac and I took the operating system off and I put Linux on it. So what's going on in this world? I think everything's getting all twisted up.
Okay. Did you put a chapter mark in there before?
I did.
Okay.
I did. Because Kevin told me to. All right. Last week, I told you about how Patreon had decided. Actually, you know what? I'm a little worried about the timing on that. I'm going to do that again.
This is Nightwise signing off.
Well, you know, what is this world coming to when Nightwise is taking Linux off of an old Mac and putting Mac OS on it? And I have recently taken Mac OS off of an old Mac and put Linux on it. I don't know. It's anarchy. Who knows what's going on? Dogs and cats. It's crazy. Well, last week, I told you about how Patreon had decided to change their billing model in a way that seriously penalized those making small contributions to lots of creators. A lot of people simply dropped Patreon. Many were forced to drop support for some creators to make up for the increased costs that they were going to be facing for the other ones. Overall, what Patreon thought would be an improvement for the creators completely ignored the detrimental impact for the real customers, the patrons themselves. I got to tell you, we have great news. Patreon backpedaled 100%. Patreon CEO Jack Conte wrote a detailed apology, and you know what? It's really well written, so I'd like to read it to you directly. Okay, let's see. We're messed up. We're sorry. Okay. Here we go. Here it is in Jack's words. Creators and patrons, we've heard you loud and clear. We're not going to roll out the changes to our payment system that we announced last week. We still have to fix the problems that those changes addressed, but we're going to fix them in a different way. And we're going to work with you to come up with the specifics, as we should have done the first time around. Many of you lost patrons and you lost income. No apology will make up for that, but nevertheless, I'm sorry. It is our core belief that you should own the relationships with your fans. These are your businesses and they are your fans. I've spent hours and hours on the phone with creators, and so has the Patreon team. Your feedback has been crystal clear. And he gave 3 bullets here. He says, the new payment system disproportionately impacted $1 to $2 patrons. We have to build a better system for them. Aggregation is highly valued, and we underestimated that. Fundamentally, creators should own the business decisions with their fans, not Patreon. We overstepped our bounds and injected ourselves into that relationship against our core belief as a business. We recognize that we need to be better at involving you more deeply and earlier in these kinds of decisions and product changes. Additionally, we need to give you more flexible product and platform to allow you to own the way you run your memberships. I know it will take a long time for us to earn back your trust, but we are utterly devoted to your success and getting you sustainable, reliable income for being a creator. We will work harder than ever to build you tools, functionality, and income, and our team won't rest until Patreon is making that happen. If you haven't sent us a note yet or you don't see your concerns listed above, please leave us your feedback here. Thanks for continuing to create. We are nothing without you, and we know that. I have to say, that's one of the best apologies I've ever read. I'm really pleased with this, and I believe that they're sincere. I've always said that we can't expect perfection out of anyone, and I believe in making decisions based on how companies and people react when they do make a mistake. I hope that you feel you can trust them again, even if it means keeping a watchful eye out to make sure they don't do it wrong when they do roll out new changes. If you left Patreon or modified your patronage downward in anticipation of the changes, I'm glad you voted with your dollars because you did help Patreon see the impact of their decisions. But now that they've turned around, I sure hope you'll come back. I did see a lot of up and down movement and people disappearing and reappearing over the last week or so. And because of all that movement, I can't easily tell if we got any new patrons. And I actually think we did, but I'm not really sure. So if you did start contributing, I really want to thank you for your patronage. If you continue to contribute, I'm really glad you did that. This is not a huge deal to me, but there's a lot of podcasters who are actually making their living doing this and other kinds of creators as well. So it was important to me that they did a great job at backpedaling on this. And hey, we all make mistakes, right?
Joe joined us.
Joe
D.
Joe
Duganzik.
Oh, Joe Duganzik. Oh, Joe Duganzik. Where?
In the chat room.
I see Nido Cayman.
That's him.
Nido Cayman. Oh, that's right. He's got that goofy name. Hi, Joe. Why am I getting an echo, Steve?
It's probably coming through my mic from the other room. Let me close my door.
No, that's okay. I think you weren't on mute during some of that, but it's okay. Oh, I'm actually going to do a contribution to the show here. It's kind of crazy. And after that, we get to hear Steve. Oh, I should probably do a chapter marker. Thank you for the water. It's a good idea. A very good martini, but
a bit much.
Here we go. That's my screen name. Okay. All right, here we go. Well, I knew this would happen. As soon as I started answering Rush's dumb question last week about why I was using Downcast, when I said I use Pocket Cast as my podcatcher of choice, I knew someone would come back with, but what about Overcast? What I did not foresee, though, was how many of you would write in with that question. Seems like a good idea to run Overcast through my criteria as well. Who knows? Maybe I'll change my mind again. But before we jump into Overcast, I wanted to give you an update on my experience with Downcast, specifically because of some help I got from Michael from Germany. As you'll recall, Downcast won in nearly every one of my criteria, except for the ability to make tailored playlists where I got to choose the episodes and reorder them not by an algorithm, but by hand. After last week's show, Michael jumped back in to help and explained a bit of a trick to do tailored playlists. Let's say I want the latest episode of Let's Talk Apple for my run. I can add the entire Let's Talk Apple podcast to my playlist, but not just the latest episode. Michael explained that when creating a playlist, among other filters, you could choose to include only locked episodes. If you lock an episode, it means that it will not be auto-deleted when played. To lock an episode, go to the specific episodes you want to include in the playlist and hit the gear in the upper right and choose lock. He also pointed out when you're in a playlist, there's an edit button that allows you to reorder the shows. I don't understand how I missed that because it's perfectly obvious and that's exactly what I was looking for. Now, this whole lock thing is a bit of a faff, as Don McAllister would say, and a locked episode has to be unlocked before you can delete it, but it does allow you to add specific episodes the way I wanted. Once I went through that exercise, I realized something. I usually only have 1 or 2 episodes of a given show downloaded on my phone anyway, so if I see an extra one after adding a podcast, Downcast actually lets me see which ones I want to delete. So Downcast actually does work well for me with playlists. Now, I have to explain why I didn't originally embrace Overcast like I did, like all the other fans did. After I'd heard a lot about it, especially its smart compression of silence, I decided to buy it. I don't remember exactly how much it was, but it was a vast sum, along the lines of $5 or $10. It's funny and kind of sad that we whine so much about so little money, but I remember it wasn't cheap. But I mean, come on, $5 or $10, that's fine. Anyway, the reason I got annoyed was within a day or two of me buying Overcast, Marco Arment decided to make it free. While that was swell, he did not automatically issue refunds for those of us who had recently purchased it. And I mean, it was like 2 or 3 days. I had to find Marco's site and fill out a form to request the money back. I thought it was a bit of poor form on his part, and I started resenting the app as a result. When I opened Overcast to do this study on the app, I was really annoyed to see an ad. It detracted from my experience. The second time I saw an ad, I didn't even realize it was an ad because it was an ad for another podcast. I tapped it and I got kind of confused about what was going on. And if I hadn't originally paid for this app, That wouldn't have annoyed me that much, right? To have ads, it's not that big of a thing, but I paid for this. Then I got my money back. Now I'm looking at ads. What's going on? Well, now it turns out Marco Arment has changed to a subscription service. It's only $10 a year, which is well under my pain threshold. But, added to my history, just kind of irritated me. But I decided to put all of that aside and try to do an unbiased study of Overcast, for the science. As I did before, I won't do an exhaustive review of every feature, but rather I'll walk through each of the features that are important to me. Now, I had originally wanted an app that did video on all platforms, and Overcast simply doesn't do video. It only does audio. But you know what? Since I've been using 2 different apps on the iPad and the iPhone all this time, one for video and one for audio, I can hardly complain about that. Maybe one app for video and one for audio would be fine. I'd like to jump right to playlists next because Overcast does playlists exactly how I would have designed them if I was in charge. At the top of the screen is a plus button to subscribe to shows. Then you'll see a giant section for playlists. At the top and in your face, it's right there. You can't miss it. You'll see all episodes. You can just scroll through what's been downloaded and play those. Below that is New Smart Playlist. Those must be a feature people like, but I prefer to handcraft my playlists. In the upper right next to the plus button is a little icon of a square with some lines on it and a small plus button. This button lets you create a new playlist or a new smart playlist. Add new playlist, it lets you name it, and then choose included episodes. Boom, that's it. That's exactly what I wanted. Well, once you create a playlist, going into it lets you play through or edit. You can delete episodes or drag them up and down to reorder them. It's absolutely perfect. Why is that so hard for other podcatcher developers to include? I mean, it's exactly what I wanted. Now, remember the up next concept in Pocket Cast? I'd come to live with it, but I gave it a bigger exercise this week. I had a 6-hour drive ahead of me, so I needed a lot of shows queued up. Turns out when you add a 5th episode to up next, it says plus 1 more instead of showing you the episode. So as you add more and more, you can't see them, which means if you can't see them, you can't reorder them. This is so wrong. I need to be in control. As I mentioned, smart playlists aren't what I want, but the implementation in Overcast is really fantastic. In a smart playlist, you can have included podcasts, but also select priority podcasts. Now, priority podcasts simply get played ahead of the non-priority shows. It's pretty cool. But beyond that, you can actually add additional episodes from whatever podcast you like. It's actually a great way to see all of the downloaded episodes in a giant list, and you can also exclude episodes from the smart playlist. I'm kind of liking the smart playlists in Overcast. One of my criteria was an easy fast forward and reverse, but that was really more about being able to swipe with video podcasts. In Overcast, there is a simple fast forward reverse on screen like the other podcatchers. It took me a long time to find the control to change how much to go back and forward, though. It's in the top level settings, but it's buried in a section called nitpicky details. Kind of like that's called that because that really does sound like me. Anyway, Overcast also has the highly desired chapter skip buttons, so that's great. As I mentioned last week, certain podcasters blather on with pre-roll ads for a very long time. I like to be able to control when each show starts, but with Overcast, it does not appear to have that option. In each podcast, you only have options to sort episodes, newest to oldest, or vice versa, whether to subscribe to all new episodes, whether to be notified of new episodes. I would prefer more nitpick controls than that. Guess I'll have to get used to hitting that fast forward button. One feature I don't really need or use, or I don't think I need, is the whole concept of trimming out silence in podcasts to get it compressed and make it go by faster. But a lot of people love this. The idea is that you can shorten a podcast by removing those long pauses, and there's a few shows I will not mention where this would be very good, but I actually enjoy long shows and I don't want to speed up my listening. But for the people who like it, Marco really broke new ground with this concept. I mentioned that with Pocket Casts, I find it tedious to delete entire podcast subscriptions. Overcast is a simple swipe, see delete, and tap it. Exactly the way I want it. The other thing I like in Overcast was that it let me import my podcast from another podcatcher. They probably all have this, but I never noticed it in the others and I never tried to use it. Overcast gave me easy instructions on how to export from Pocket Casts or Downcast and then how to import. I did it from Pocket Casts and it worked perfectly. Once I had all of the shows in, I was able to delete all those shows I'd always wanted to delete over in Pocket Cast, but the friction was just too high. Well, another important criteria to me is that podcatchers keep things cleaned up for me. I don't want to open a podcast and notice it has downloaded and kept 20 episodes clogging up my phone storage. In the general settings of Overcast, you can choose whether to download all new episodes and whether to have them deleted after you play them. In each podcast, you can choose how many unplayed episodes to keep, which is a great way to control the clutter. Oh, I'm tired. I've been talking a long time.
This is a long one. Definitely. How do the reindeer do it? These antlers are getting really sore.
Well, and you have such a tiny little head. Well, you should tell them that these are cat.
That's true. Maybe that's the problem. They're meant for. No, I think they're meant for dogs.
Oops, I drank out of the wrong glass. Oh, darn. Kaylee turns the ads back on. Interesting. Oh, Kevin listens to audio podcasts on his iPad Nano. Wow, I remember that. That was old school.
Yeah, we used to run a lot with those Nanos.
Yep.
They were perfect because they were so light.
Yeah. Okay. I think I just said control the clutter, right? Which is a great way to control the clutter. Okay. I'm going back in. Here we go. If you find it tedious to dive into each podcast and back out to set the limits for each show, there's actually a way to do it more efficiently in the general settings. Look for unlistened episode limits. Tap that and you'll see all of your podcast subscription. I have noticed that many times in this post, Steve, I say podcatcher when it should be podcatchers. And episode limits.
Do you want me to search for those?
Maybe. It's every time it says podcatcher singular, check and see if it's supposed to be. It's a lot of work for you, though.
Can I edit while you're looking at it?
Hmm.
Maybe I should wait.
Yeah, probably. Okay, here we go. Tap that and you'll see all of your podcast subscriptions with the default value of 2 for how many to keep. You can change them all to a new default value, I should say, with buttons across the top, and you can change each subscription with a little plus minus button, one by one. I absolutely love the attention to more efficient ways to set things up to your desires. Like I said earlier, by podcast, you can choose how many episodes to keep as well. That's a way to do it because some shorter podcasts are appropriate to let pile up, but 2-hour-long shows would be overwhelming if you kept too many of them. I had to write up what's not to like. As much as I wanted to dislike Overcast going in, I have to begrudgingly admit that it's pretty darn good. There are a couple of things I'd like to see improved. In Pocket Cast, I can reorder my podcasts alphabetically by name or by episode release date, or as I like it, in a custom order. Pocket Cast has both a list view and a grid view, and you simply press and hold and drag them up into any order you like. If you like to find things visually, the grid view is great. I like to be able to put my favorite shows at the top. I know that you're shocked to learn that I want to control this too. This doesn't seem to be a nitpick to me, though, to want your podcast to display your favorites at the top. I mean, Marco's podcast is called the Accidental Tech Podcast, which starts with an A, but I really like Zetai Geek.io, which starts with a Z, and it's going to be down at the bottom. And what if I forgot about that? That would be a terrible thing. I don't want to do that. I want to see them in my order. The other thing I miss with Overcast is Pocket Cast has a red badge on each podcast showing me how many unplayed episodes I have waiting for me. The podcast list view does show a podcast below a line when there's nothing waiting for you, which is helpful, but in Overcast, I'd like to know how many are waiting. Now, it bothers the daylights out of me when podcasters don't level their audio. I can't tell you how many times I've tortured the SMR podcast guys about how one of them will be too quiet to hear. I really push the Levelator, which is a free cross-platform audio leveling tool. I send it to all podcasters who have this problem. But Stephen Getz told me he'd never noticed that problem when he listens to the SMR podcast. And I wondered what that was. He suspected it was because he turned on the feature in Overcast called Voice Boost. He sent me the developer's explanation of the feature. This is what Marco calls it. Voice Boost is a combination of dynamic compression and equalization that can make many shows more listenable and normalize volumes across all shows. This makes amateur-produced podcasts, including many of my favorites, more listenable in loud environments like cars, where you'd otherwise need to crank the volume so loudly to hear the quiet parts that you'd blow your ears out when the loudest person spoke. Well, shortly after Stephen pointed out this feature to me, Steve and I were listening to one of his supposedly professional shows, but okay, I stumbled that too many times. It's poorly written. Well,
you needed a break anyway.
I did. My shoulder's getting sore.
Are you to accessibility yet?
No.
Oh, wow.
I'm almost there. This person spoke. What happened there? Okay. I do need you to fix this one, Steve. Right above that, 2 paragraphs up, it says, Steve and I were listening to one of his supposedly professional shows. I don't know who he is. Oh, I did mean his. It was one of the shows you were listening to. It was like one of your murder shows. Or no, it was one of your science shows.
Yeah. Okay. Like sci-fi or...
Yeah, so I did write it right. Okay, here goes. Well, shortly after this, Steve... Steve? Well, shortly after Stephen pointed out this feature to me, Steve and I were listening to one of the podcasts he really likes, which are supposedly professional shows, but they had clearly not leveled their audio. We were getting kind of annoyed, and then I remembered the feature, and I tapped that voice boost button, and I was amazed at how well it worked. We actually would have stopped listening, and instead, it was very listenable with voice boost on Overcast. One other cool feature I discovered in my poking around was that you can see how much storage your podcasts are consuming on your device. It shows storage by podcast, which is a terrific way to see what's eating up your space. If you got really limited storage or you're a hoarder of unlistened to podcasts, this feature could be a lifesaver. Steve, I'm hearing echo. I don't think you're muted.
Oh, that's right. Unmuting or no.
So the part where I said mute?
This part right here.
Man, I'm tired of talking. I thought this was all everybody else. Okay, here we go. When I first checked out Overcast for accessibility, I was ready to tell you that it was a hot mess for the visually impaired. In fact, I had written up saying, don't even use it. Luckily, before I published my analysis, I recorded this week's Chit Chat Across the Pond with Allison Hartley, who is a voiceover user. I mentioned that enough of Overcast was inaccessible that I would not recommend it, and she reacted with complete surprise. She said, I use it Overcast all the time. What are you talking about? Well, one of the most glaring places Overcast was inaccessible for me was in the playback screen of a specific episode. For the people who are sighted, the top half of the screen is where you can toggle voice boost and smart speed, Marco's name for trimming silence. And you can set the speed of playback and a few other controls. This top half of the screen simply bonks in VoiceOver, which is how you know it's inaccessible. Allison said that on screen, she simply selects the effects button in the bottom left. But I had no effects button in the bottom left. And that's where the ads are. Where she was seeing the effects button, I was seeing ads. We eventually figured out that because I had turned VoiceOver on while already in the playback screen, I could see the ads. But if you turn on VoiceOver before you go into the playback screen, there are no ads, and instead there's an effects button in the bottom left. And when opened, sure enough, there's a fully accessible version of Smart Speed, Voice Boost, and also the other controls. It's fascinating to me that the interface changes even visually if you have VoiceOver enabled. I've never seen that before in any other app. It's also interesting that the blind don't get to see the ads. I am so glad I talked to Allison before giving you really bad information on the accessibility of Overcast. So bottom line, I hate to admit it, but I think I'm actually going to switch to Overcast. I won't switch to it on my iPad because it doesn't support video, but for audio podcasts, I really had to stretch to find anything not to like. I'll probably even pay the darn $10 a year to get rid of the ads. It's that good. All right. Did you fix that for me, Steve? Oh, no, you didn't end up having to fix it. That's right. Save.
How's the chapter marking going?
Going pretty good. What's next? Okay, I did Patreon already. Where am I? I think it might be you now, Steve.
Oh.
All right, here we go.
Sounds like we're getting close to the end.
We are. Thank goodness. Tired. 41 minutes. All right, I'm going to sit back and I'm going to drink my martini with you guys. Well, I'm going to put one little audio thing in here. Yeah. Why is it not recording? Oh. Let's. Okay, Steve. You're not only not muted, you're belching into the microphone. I hope everybody got a big enjoyment out of it. It's great, honey. Very professional. Here we go. Let's close out the show with an annual tradition. Let's close out the show with an annual tradition. Steve's rendition of The Nightmare Before Christmas, featuring Honda Bob and the NosillaCast Castaways.
Hold on. It's not it's not Nightmare Before
Did
Christmas.
I say Nightmare?
Yes.
Let's close out the show with an annual tradition. Steve's rendition of The Nightmare Before Christmas.
It's a martini, right? Talking.
Okay, so that's why you come to the live show. I do always call it The Nightmare Before Christmas. Okay, here we go. You should watch The Nightmare Before Christmas, Steve. Try it again. It was even in text.
Okay, I'm muting.
She really shouldn't be driving. No straight line or breathalyzer test. That's for sure. Okay, here we go. I can't stop laughing. Well, let's close out the show with an annual tradition, Steve's rendition of The Night Before Christmas, featuring Honda Bob and the NosillaCast Castaways. Okay, here we go.
Much better.
Bring in Steve. Honda Bob and the NosillaCast Castaways.
'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a trackpad. Okay, work with me here. The earbuds were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that all things eye maker soon would be there. The NosillaCast Castaways were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of iPads danced in their heads. Podfeet in her kerchief and I in my cravat had just settled down for a long winter Skype chat. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from the keyboard to see what was the matter. Away to the windows! I flew like a flash drive, tore open the shutters, and nearly did a nosedive. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave the luster of brushed aluminum to objects below. When what to my eyes seemed very bizarre, but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny cars. With the little old driver with whom elves hobnob, I knew in a moment it must be Honda Bob. More rapid than 4G his vehicles they came, and he tweeted and shouted and called them by name. Now Accord, now Civic, now Fit and CRV, on Element, on Ridgeline, on Pilot and Odyssey, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now drive away, drive away, drive away all. As dry leaves that before the reality distortion field endowed, when they meet with an obstacle mount to the cloud, so up to the housetop the vehicles they flew, with the sleigh full of Apple products, and Honda Bob too. And then in a twinkling, I heard with a squeal the skidding and sliding of each little wheel. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney Bob came with a bound. He was dressed in coveralls from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with oil and soot. A bundle of SSDs he had flung in his Scotty vest, and he looked like a geek who was extremely obsessed. A wink of his eye and a look not too pious soon gave me to know he had an Apple bias. He spoke not a word, but texted his concern, and he filled all the stockings and then hit return. And laying a finger aside his levitation app, a command to his iPad, up the chimney, ASAP. He sprang to his sleigh, and the autos did they bristle, and away they all flew as if shot from a missile. But I heard him exclaim as the poem prescribed, Happy Christmas to all, and please stay subscribed.
I was muted.
I don't hear. Oh, there you are.
Well, John pointed out that I was not muted. Called out.
Now you know how it feels.
Good job. Good job.
Thank you, Wingman.
Don't forget the chapter marker index for George.
So people who have been to the show the past few years know that we play this every year, as you mentioned. But I did have to edit it this time because it's no longer a Macintosh bias. I had to edit. It's an Apple bias. You know, I don't know. I think it must have been the past year you did this then, right?
Yeah, it was. When is the next live show? The next live show will be on January 7th. Oh, man. Will we be here, Steve? We may not be here.
Be in Vegas.
Yeah.
You can't miss 3 live shows. Maybe we need to do a live show from Vegas.
Yeah, we're going to be in Vegas. Shoot. And I got to make a note to change the calendar.
We'll call it the CES live show. It may not be that Sunday. Well, would it be that Sunday night?
Yeah, no, we're in Vegas that night. Talk about the drunk show. I mean, okay. Well, I'm gonna wing it.
What do you mean?
Just gonna talk now. Bye. Mute.
Please stay subscribed.
Well, thanks, Steve, for keeping that annual tradition going. But this is going to wind us up for this week. And we were just talking in the live show. We realized that, so we've got Christmas Eve next week. We've got New Year's Eve the following week. But the following week after that, the 7th, we're going to be in Las Vegas. So there will definitely not be a live show on that Sunday night. I don't know if we'll try to do it early, what we're going to do. But stay tuned, and the best thing you can do is subscribe to the Google Calendar. It's on podfeed.com/live. There is a calendar there, so go check that and keep an eye on where the dates move. And I'll, of course, be tweeting and Facebooking and Google Plusing and LinkedIning and all that kind of stuff. I'll be telling everybody. Does anybody even look at LinkedIn? I do it all the time, but I don't think anybody cares. But anyway, I could really use some help if you can send in some dumb questions, comments, or suggestions and email me at allison@podfeed.com. I specifically need some content for between Christmas and New Year's, like I said. So send that to allison@podfeed.com. You can follow me on Twitter @podfeed. And remember, anything you want to do that has to do with the show, podfeed.com/whatever you're looking for. You want to be a Patreon subscriber? You know, you want to donate through Patreon? Go to podfeed.com/Patreon. You want to join our Facebook community? Podfeed.com/Facebook. Maybe you're kind of against the whole Facebook thing. You'd rather go the Google Plus route. Podfeed.com/Google Plus. And if you want to support the show through Amazon, podfeed.com/Amazon. And normally, if you wanted to join the fun of the live show, except like maybe till the middle of January, head on over to podfeed.com/live on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific time and join the friendly and enthusiastic Nosilla castaways. Thanks for listening and stay subscribed.
Well, you got through it, Podfeet. Good job.
A little clumsy there. Not my best work.
The second martini show. I think it's better than the first.
Oh, I think so. I think
because you remembered Lindsay's name.
Oh my God, I got to take these off. That is just killing me.
It's getting a little bit tight.
There's a serious dent at the top.
It's like having a clothespin on your head.
Oh, it is. Well, mine was on the top. That was really killing me. Was yours on the sides?
Yeah, I was pressing right behind my ears.
All right, what's the closeout music on? Outro. There we go. Wait, Sandy wrote, "Yay, Podfeet! I made it." So yeah, I don't know what we're gonna do about the live show. We'll have to figure that out.
That's the days.
What's that, Steve?
That's the day we arrive, right?
Yeah, but we're gonna be hanging out with. Is Don coming this year?
Yes, he is.
Anybody going to Vegas? Is Joe LaGreca still in here?
You mean Joe Dugancic?
Oh, it's Joe Dugancic was here. Joe Dugancic.
He left though.
Oh, he did? Well, yeah, I've made lunch plans with him, by the way.
Yep.
Stay subscribed. You know, I always do all this work at the end of the show to kind of make the audio kind of come up right there at the end. I just realized Levelator or Auphonic Leveler probably fixes all that anyway. All right.
George wants you to have an Everclear martini.
We had some Everclear once. Tell him what happened to that.
I think we've talked about it on the show several times, but eventually it just kind of evaporated or it reduced itself.
It was just gone at one point.
I think the lid wasn't on tight enough.
Maybe. Kevin just wants some Everclear straight. New jet will go from Tokyo to LA in 6 hours. So you could make the live show. Done. Close. All right, guys. Well, it is 6:01. I've kept you past class, and the martini's kicking in, so I think I better finish the show. But say goodnight to everybody, Steve.
Good night, Gracie.
All right. Good night, everybody. Good night, Rose. We'll see you in maybe a month. I don't know. I miss you guys. We'll do something. We'll get together. It'll be fine. Bye-bye, guys.